It seems like there is hope yet in the ongoing case between Trudeau and the good people of Canada. It has been reported that from the 19th of September, public inquiries into the unprecedented use of the Emergencies Act by Trudeau would begin. The judicial inquiries would be made known to the public as soon as it begins, as this has been assured to Canadians by the Commission handling the inquiries. Justice Paul said that one of the Commission's primary responsibilities is to hold the Government of Canada to account for its decision to declare a public order emergency under the Emergencies Act. And this is what the Commission plans to do, or at least we hope it does. It is expected that the Commission would call in a variety of witnesses ranging from participants of the Freedom Convoy protest, law enforcement agencies across all levels, federal, provincial, and municipal officials, and businesses that were affected by the protest that was held last winter. The hearings will last until the 28th of October, 2022. If everything goes free and fair, Trudeau and his government will be expected to present extremely strong evidence to back their use of the Emergencies Act, which, despite being part of our country's constitution, had never been used prior to last winter. I believe it is right to remind you at this point that the Emergencies Act found its way into the Constitution as a means to give the state more power to handle situations that pose extreme threats and dangers to Canada, so it is unfathomable why Trudeau chose to invoke the Act on peaceful, unarmed protesters as though they were part of an invading foreign force. Meanwhile, measures that were undertaken during the declaration of the Act will as well be investigated. Statistics show that the enforcement of the Act saw about 230 Canadians get arrested and nearly $8 million in assets that were owned by the convoy's organizers and supporters get frozen. If this is not a dictatorship at its worst, then I don't know what is, because what reasonable explanation would be given to defend Trudeau for clamping down so hard on protesters who never even fired a bullet in provocation? I want to believe that the Commission just wants to follow due process in this matter because the evidence against Trudeau is enough to bypass any judicial proceedings and lock him up in jail. The latest of this evidence happens to be some court documents recently released by the Supreme Court, where it was written that Trudeau's national security and intelligence advisor had actually told Trudeau and his cabinet about a potential breakthrough in talks with the protesters. Trudeau and his ministers, especially his public safety minister Marco Mendicino, were aware of this fact, yet Trudeau chose to invoke the Act barely 24 hours after his advisor brought the news to him. When you're dealing with a power-drunk politician as the country's leader, this is simply what you get. Senseless decisions that have no positive impact on the situation it is used in. Justice Rouleau stated his aim to make the inquiries as transparent as possible when he said that he intends to conduct the hearings in as open and transparent a manner as possible. The inquiry must help Canadians gain a better understanding of the events, he said. The proceedings are expected to be live-streamed on the Commission's website, while a final report would be made available on February 6, 2023 under statutory deadlines. Meanwhile, Trudeau's cabinet is yet to disclose what evidence they would be banking on to defend themselves against the allegations against them with regards to the Emergencies Act. This is even after questions have been posed to them on that matter. On April 28, Conservative MP Dane Louis told the House of Commons that they had asked many times for the current government to confirm if it will disclose the evidence that justifies invocation of the Emergencies Act, and every time the question was asked, Trudeau's government has refused to respond. The reason is clear here. Trudeau doesn't have any strong evidence to back him up because he and his cabinet know that their invoking of the Emergencies Act was wrong and against what the Canadian Constitution stood for. Lloyd said it himself when he mentioned that Canadians were now asking whether Trudeau in fact has any evidence at all to defend himself. Trudeau's government has tried on numerous occasions in the past to justify their use of the Emergencies Act against the Freedom Convoy, but each and every one of them has been debunked. Let me start with a few, though. Recall that in the month of February, several ministers of Trudeau's cabinet came out to say that the Freedom Convoy enjoyed foreign support in terms of finance. Mendicino himself told the press that many of the donations used for the convoy were raised abroad, and of course, he said this without evidence. Bill Blair, who is the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, also said that foreign entities were behind the convoy. Of course, these claims were also taken up and spread by Trudeau's most trusted puppet, the legacy media. The CBC and Toronto Star also released publications stating that the convoy was fueled by foreign donations and support. Later on, the CBC had to retract a story that said the convoy had support from overseas. Why would they do that if they were so sure of themselves? During a Commons Finance Committee meeting on March 17th, GoFundMe president Juan Benitez denied the claims that the convoy was funded by foreigners. He said that the platform did not detect any large donations coming from a non-Canadian supporter. When he was asked by Conservative MP Ed Fast whether there were any large donations that raised red flags during the Freedom Convoy, Benitez replied by saying, in his words, "We did not discover that, no. As we reviewed the donations, we did not identify significant donations or patterns that were there. Also, the General Counsel of GoFundMe, Kim Wilford, stated that the largest donation of $300,000 to the Freedom Convoy came from a Canadian. So where did Trudeau and his lying cabinet come up with the story of a foreign sponsorship? This alone is enough to get Trudeau prosecuted for misuse of power, but let's go on with the expose. After the Deputy Prime Minister talked about enhancing FINTRAC to effectively combat the protesters, which she labeled as terrorists, the RCMP came forth to deny the claim from Trudeau's government that the convoy received terrorist financing. During a March 7th Commons Finance Committee meeting, the RCMP Director of Financial Crimes, Denis Boudouin, said that despite the government's claim, the RCMP did not detect any trace of terrorist funding for the Freedom Convoy. During that meeting, Boudouin was told by Conservative MP Philip Lawrence that FINTRAC had been with the committee before their meeting with Boudouin, and that FINTRAC had stated that they did not find any evidence of terrorist funding as regards the Freedom Convoy. When Boudouin was asked if he had seen any trace of terrorist activity, he replied in the negative. The Deputy Director of Intelligence at the Financial Transactions and Analysis Centre of Canada, Barry McKillop, also came forth to say that the Freedom Convoy was not sponsored by terrorists. In McKillop's words to the Commons Finance Committee on February 24th, it was their own money. It wasn't cash that funded terrorism or was in any way money laundering. These were people who supported the cause before it was declared illegal. There were people around the world who were fed up with COVID and were upset and saw the demonstrations. I believe they just wanted to support the cause. On March 24th, Ottawa Police Interim Chief Steve Bell said that no loaded firearms were discovered among the truckers who the police arrested after the act was invoked by Trudeau. When Conservative MP Dane Lloyd asked him whether or not loaded firearms were found in the possession of the truckers, Bell said no. Prior to this, Legacy Media had been parading the news that the truckers were armed with firearms. Also, numerous Liberal MPs and NDP MPs, along with the Legacy Media, accused the Freedom Convoy of being behind the planned arson attempt on a residential building on the 6th day of February. The Ottawa Police Service promptly debunked the false allegations, stating that the attempted arson was in no way connected to the protesters. Trudeau's government came again in another attempt to justify their claim when the Minister of Public Safety, Marco Mendicino, told the House of Commons that the law enforcement agencies had come forth to the government with a request that Trudeau invokes the Emergencies Act. Of course, this lie was denied by the law enforcement agencies. But at this time, I can only ask myself how stupid Trudeau and his government can really get. They lied directly against the institution that had previously opposed their claim that the Freedom Convoy had terrorist intentions. What in the world would have made them think that the same law enforcement agencies would agree to corroborate their lie? As I said earlier, I don't see any reason why the Commission cannot term Trudeau guilty at this point, except that they want to go through due process because the evidence against the Prime Minister is so overwhelming that it would be a case of corruption and injustice at its highest if the Commission does not find him guilty by February next year when the final report will be released. What do you think about the public inquiries? Do you think the Commission will finally put an end to Trudeau's reign over Canadians, thus giving us hope for the future of ourselves and our children? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. We would love to hear them. Also, it would be extremely kind of you if you could buy us a cup of coffee. This would go a long way in encouraging us in the work we do of bringing the truth to you. You can help us out by clicking the thanks button down below. Please don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't yet. You can also turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on any of our videos. Thanks for staying with us, and I will see you in the next one.